Session 9, titled Learners for Life, How the Youth Can Lead Sustainability. To shed light, one of the very important aspects of continuous learning about using new solutions for sustainability. Our speaker for that session, Gebo Burt, from the founder of the Slingshot Framework Corporate. Floor is yours.
Good afternoon. Here we go. Welcome, and of course, thank you for having me as well. We have a nice, intimate group here, so I really want to have a stimulating journey together. What do you think of the title of my presentation? I changed it a little bit to make it a little bit more provocative, so hopefully it's arousing your curiosity. It's all about how to convert our vision, our mission into reality. And what I'd like to share with you are what I think are four key drivers, four key principles that will make us able to turn vision into reality when we're talking about sustainability, and then to give you a few examples of this in action. Sounds good? Good way of spending our time together? Great. All right, so here we go. So the first thing I like to do is just, of course, reflect on the 17 goals that have been discussed, debated, and thought about in the last day and a half, 2 days of this conference. And on one hand, we can say that they're incredibly exciting and very, very positive. But on the other hand, we can also say that they are daunting, that they are overwhelming. They seem incredibly challenging. So I would like to get your idea, your opinion. So please raise your hand if, in your opinion, in your thinking, in the next 10 years, so until 2030, you think that we can make significant progress in at least 5 of the 17 goals that we have set out. So raise your hand if you think at least 5 of these will be realistically achieved. And look around so you can see that's maybe about half the group. Now, keep your hand up if you think that 10 of these goals will be achievable. So at least 10 of these goals in 10 years. All right, we still have a few hands up. And how about at least 15 of these goals in the next 10 years? We have one very, very optimist. Oh, and right up front. So we have a couple of pure optimists. That's great. But there's a great diversity of our thinking in terms of how realistic these goals are. So how do we go about achieving things that seem very, very difficult? And one thing is to draw inspiration from the past and to reflect on that as a point of departure. So I like to reference the first moon landing, which is very timely since it happened 50 years ago. And it all started by President Kennedy announcing in 1961 that within the end of the decade, a man would take a step on the moon, right? And at that time, the technology didn't yet exist to make this happen. US has only put one person in space a month before, and not even in orbit. But by declaring such an exciting and seemingly impossible challenge, what happened? It kicked the collective imagination and creativity of the entire country into gear because a noble goal has been set and it was achieved. So in 1969, less than 10 years, so 8 years later, the first man, in fact, landed on the moon. And I think that there are really 4 things that drive this sort of achievement, and I call them the 4 I's. The first one is just that, imagination, engaging our imagination, which to me is this primal fuel we have for achievement. And this fuel is incredibly abundant, it's free, and highly powerful. And our ability to engage it is a key departure point for achieving all the sustainability goals that we have set for ourselves. The imperative of lifelong learning, this idea of continuously reinventing, refreshing the way that we think, what we do, and being open and curious throughout our lives. 3, igniting mass engagement by shifting guilt to joy. In other words, by keeping the imperative and the urgency of all the things that sustainability is about, let's shift the dialogue from negative drivers such as shame, guilt, and fear to positive, such as enjoyment and happiness and collective achievement, because that will get more of the population on board. And number 4, take advantage of what I call the innovation shortcut. The innovation shortcut is combining already existing components in new ways to achieve our goals, rather than having to invent anything, which is risky, time-consuming, and expensive. So let me take these one at a time quickly. So here is a child drawing of Thomas Edison, who is considered one of the greatest inventors of all time. Among other things, he invented, of course, the light bulb, the phonograph, the electric power station, the motion picture camera, the jet ski, the iPad. Maybe those last two, just seeing if you're paying attention. But he probably could have. So Thomas Edison was once asked by a reporter, Mr. Edison, you being the greatest inventor of all time, what do you think is the world's greatest invention? And what do you think his response was? Immediately. He didn't have to think about it, said it right away. A child's imagination. Okay, that was his response. How interesting, right? And why would he say that? Because really, that's where it all starts. And it's the same thing that Peter Mernholz is saying, who is a customer experience expert. Everything that we need to know about innovation, about new things, about driving the future, we learned in kindergarten. All those pieces, all those elements of our sense of creativity, adventure, and curiosity were right there. And this is echoed by Sir Richard Branson, one of our iconic entrepreneurs and social entrepreneurs of our time, who says also that imagination is one of our greatest qualities. Without it, our world wouldn't be what it is today. And this is a resource, this is a tool, an ability that's open and available to all of us. Now, once we harness creativity, and this is why there is such transformation in education, so that children who have naturally gifted creativity and imagination, that they can retain their individuality, their sense of creativity, rather than be trained and educated out of it, is how do we retain and continuously reinvent ourselves? So even Confucius, the Chinese philosopher 2,500 years ago, had this great insight about the importance of always learning, always renewing ourselves, because that allows us to be the movers and shakers. And that's what we're talking about, being the change agents. And Santosh Joshi, the famous Indian life coach, echoes the same sentiment. To change the world around us, we need to change ourselves first. In other words, we have to be open to new ways of thinking, to new ideas, to new approaches to what we want to solve. And if you look at this quote by Muhammad Yunus, the Nobel Prize winner, originator of micro-lending, and showing that you can lend to the poorest of the poor, and most of whom were women, a very profitable and sustainable way. Look at what he's saying also, that his greatest obstacle is the mindset of people that were not willing to change and see things in new ways. So this all has to do with this notion of continuously reinventing ourselves and being open to new ideas and new pursuits, which I believe is the natural way that our mind thinks. What is this fly doing here? How did I get into my presentation? No, actually, this is a quick personal anecdote on this. So my parents told me that I was very young, not even 2 years old. I was once playing with a matchbox on a small table, so a little toy car, pushing it back and forth. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw a fly that landed on the table. And perhaps for the first time, I really focused in on this thing. And I found it interesting, so I reached out to touch the fly, and the fly disappeared. And my natural reaction was to look under the table to see where it has fallen, right? And I didn't know where it was. Went back to playing, the fly came back a few more times. My reaction was the same, just to look under the table. But the fourth time the fly came and went away, I looked up and looked around, and on the wall I saw it, right? It's such a simple illustration that happens to all of us as children, or your children if you're watching and observing, but think about the profundity of that mindset shift, right? That I had a way of understanding the world, that if something disappears, it falls, so must be somewhere below, that was challenged by a whole new paradigm. And as children, we're receptive, we're open to this new way of thinking, which is what makes us so powerful. And if we can hang on to this throughout our lives, then we have the ability to continuously explore new frontiers. And this has to do with this notion of reimagining boundaries. So our ability, our receptiveness to reimagine boundaries. And I personally think this is such an important concept that I'm in the middle of forming a new entity called the Coalition of Lifelong Learning. So bringing together the best organizations and visionaries from around the world who are shaping the future of lifelong learning, so that the traditional model of learning in the first 20 years of our lives and then applying that is shifting so that we are going to be learners for life, always renewing, refreshing, pivoting in our ways of interacting with our environment and everything that surrounds us. So the third idea is this notion of how do we ignite mass appeal? Because that's one of the key things about sustainability. It has to be embraced by everyone. And for this, I think we can ask a very basic question, which is, what do people want in life, right? That is the ultimate question we need to ask, because everything we do should support and drive that. And I love this quote by an army psychologist who said the following: "The human equation is to multiply joy and to divide pain. Pain shared is pain multiplied. Joy shared is joy divided." Beautiful quote, right? So the goal of sustainability and the way that we want to package it is this. We want to make sure that sustainable practices turn pain points into points of delight and joy. That's the ultimate goal. We want to make people have happy, content lives. And in the process of how we achieve sustainability should also tap into this psychology. And that's why instead of trying to ignite fear and shame and guilt, we should ignite joy and camaraderie and happiness in the way that we bring together people to help us in achieving sustainability. And lastly, the innovation shortcut. Let me give you a simple illustration with the story of the square watermelon, right? It seems like an absurd concept. Maybe you think it's not real, but it is. And it's from Japan, where you have an island with a lot of people and limited space. So the watermelon is a delicious fruit, but it has one major drawback. It's very awkward shape, so that it's hard to store, especially in apartments that have a little space. So a group of farmers not long ago asked the seemingly absurd what-if question, or what if we could make a watermelon square? Wouldn't that be great and solve this problem? And most everyone, not surprisingly, rejected this as just a silly and senseless idea. But these farmers pursued this idea and discovered that the solution was as simple as putting a watermelon seed in soil inside a cardboard box. And this watermelon would grow up and assume the shape of that cardboard box. Now, was this an invention? Did they invent anything? No. They took two ordinary existing things that has never been combined before: a cardboard box and a watermelon seed, right? Innovation shortcut. So let me show you how this works in the realm of sustainability, these four concepts. This is a picture of a school in Ghana. And one of the biggest problems in Ghana is that in remote areas, these schools are off the electric grid, so they have no electricity, and when the sun goes down, the children cannot study. So it seriously curtails their ability to learn and the education system. So how do we solve this problem? What might be some creative solutions? And the one I like to share with you is this one. This is called Empower Playground, and it was introduced by a former executive from Exxon, from the oil industry. And what this is all about is bringing play equipment, so merry-go-rounds, to the schools on which the children play, and their movement, their energy is captured and then transferred into these smart LED devices through which children can then have light to learn when it's dark, right? So how does this capture the concepts that I shared with you? Well, it's an example of lifelong learning because this was started by a former Exxon executive who was searching for a completely new challenge and pivoted and wanted to do something here, right? And his experience through his work and his creative ability to see this problem in a completely different way was the breakthrough that led to this. Is this transforming pain into joy? Of course, at least on 2 levels, because it's providing a way for children to play beside giving them access to electricity. And in a sense, they also contribute to actually generating their own electricity. And of course, it's solving their key problem, which is giving them lights so they can study. And of course, this is also an example of the innovation shortcut, because who would have thought that if you mix modern technology with an object of play, you actually get to solve a problem of lighting, okay? Another example is a company that I work with in England, which makes sportswear apparel, such as this T-shirt, out of bamboo. Now, what's interesting about bamboo is that it's the fastest growing plant in the world, and it's very good for the soil because it keeps the soil from eroding, unlike cotton, which actually does the opposite. And it has wonderful qualities for consumers because it is naturally moisture wicking, has a anti-perspirant, antifungal, and has an automatic temperature control. So this business owner that I was working with was already sustainability conscious, because what he was saying is that for every T-shirt purchased, $1 will be donated to help save the rainforest in Suriname in South America. But then we ask, how do we take this to the next level? How do we really engage and connect your buyers, your consumers with sustainability? And this is what we came up with. What if, when someone buys one of the bamboo T-shirts, they also get a certificate of being the honorary guardian of 1 square meter of the rainforest. And on that certificate is your land number, your plot number, and on our website you can visit and see who your neighbors are, right? Who are the other protectors of the land right around you, thereby forming a community and conversation and joint experiences. Moreover, come to our website, and through the webcam, you can see 24/7 the land for which you are honorably responsible for. You're the honorary guardian of. So you can see plants and trees growing. You can see animals moving through that. You could be personally and viscerally connected to the rainforest, right? You see the elevation of what we're doing and the positive association that we're building based on these principles. And last, the next example is from the US, from Florida actually, where 2 of the most marginalized components of society, one, abandoned and abused dogs who are basically going to be put down, put to sleep, and people in prison, not hardened criminals, but people who committed a petty crime out of desperation. So what can you do to bring these 2 separate and equally desperate parts of society together to help each other? Well, the Florida prison system launched a program called Prison Dogs. And what they're doing is matching one of these abused, abandoned dogs with a prisoner, one-on-one, for a period of 6 months, during which the prisoner trains the dog, and in the process, they are both rehabilitated back into society. Why? Because they both develop a new sense of camaraderie, fellowship, friendship, belonging, and worth and value, right? The dogs are trained, and after 6 months, they become companion dogs, guardian dogs, service dogs, and the prisoners, they have a new sense of work, value, and a skill that they can use once they are reintegrated into society. So again, bringing together 2 things that normally wouldn't go together and solving both social or problems. Last example is just about a garbage mountain, which I think we can agree is the ultimate symbol of the lack of sustainability. This is about waste. This is about something that's an object of repulsion, rejection. So the question is, how do we transform this, a mountain of garbage, into an object of joy, of sustainability, right? So here are a couple of examples. Number 1, this is from Copenhagen, where a waste disposal site near the city, this capital city, was turned into a power station as well as a ski mountain, okay? So all that garbage was now being inside the mountain used to fuel new energy, and the outside of the mountain, is being taken advantage in terms of its slope and shape to allow people to ski. And what you see is not actually snow, but a snow-like material, again, used from reconverted garbage that allows you to simulate the experience of skiing. So now, all of a sudden, an object of repulsion becomes an object of attraction. What was a place that most everyone wanted to avoid now is everybody wants to go to. Another example is from Paraguay, where outside the capital city of Asunción is a town which is literally just garbage. This is where all the garbage was dumped, and kids would go around rummaging through the garbage, finding little pieces that had some marginal value, until a music teacher came to this. And in the garbage, what he actually saw were components to make instruments, musical instruments out of. So he collected children, taught them how to make their own instruments, taught them how to play music, and now this orchestra has become world famous and travels the world playing to sold-out audiences. The world sends us garbage, and we send them back music. So here are in summary, the 4 I's that I propose are the key to drive the achievement of sustainability, and examples that I shared with you. From imagination as our primary fuel, imperative of lifelong learning, igniting mass appeal by shifting negative drivers to positive emotional drivers, guilt to joy, and the innovation shortcut. Looking at our entire world, everything that's available to us, including new technology, and understanding new links, new connections. So just a picture of a smile, just for a moment, to reflect on the positivity that I'm sharing with you in terms of it all starts with setting really ambitious goals, and then that brings out the best in humanity in our ability to really harness our creativity and make. So I close. One is an inspirational quote by Muhammad Ali, one of the greatest athletes of all time. In fact, he was called the greatest. But he transcended sports and became a symbol of reaching for really ambitious goals, of reimagining boundaries. And he had this wonderful perspective on the word impossible, right? Which is sometimes what we might think of in terms of the sustainability goals. Impossible is just a big word thrown around by men who would rather live in a world that they've been given than to explore the power they have to change it. Impossible is not a fact, it's an opinion. It's not a declaration, it's a dare. Impossible is potential, it's temporary, impossible is nothing. All right, what a beautiful statement, and how apropos when we're talking about really ambitious goals that we have talked about in the last 2 days. And finally, my call of action to you, just 4 words. And by the way, the whole symbol and name of my own platform is Slingshot, because it's reminiscent of this universal childhood toy and the mechanism of launching us forward, and our ability to launch us forward into new spaces of heightened achievement and new levels of prosperity. And those 4 words are take aim. In other words, we have the 17 goals of sustainability. That's our mission, that's our vision. So let's take aim and target those. Number 2, launch. Have a way of getting there, of turning vision, mission into reality, into action. And these 4 key principles I shared with you, I think, are at the center of that, so let's make use of them. And lastly, repeat. So this is not a one-time process, but an ongoing way for us to engage with each other and to always bring the best out in us. So thank you for your attention, and let's reimagine the world together. Thank you.